But, you know, the media bears some responsibility here. They consistently create a moral equivalence between terrorists who butcher innocent people and policies of a democracy like Israel. Even CNN this morning talked without comment about this being a revenge attack because of a hanging. Well, the hanging was a suicide by a Palestinian, at least according to Israeli officials.
That's not what the Palestinians believe.
I understand that, but they
and going back to the Temple Mount, right? Israel's restricting access to certain Palestinians, and that has ratcheted tensions up in the area.
But they eliminated those restrictions. But to call it a cycle of violence fails to understand that this is a policy of Palestinian terrorists to attack Israeli civilians. It is not a cycle of violence.
Even though Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian leader, condemned these attacks on the synagogue.
He condemned them along with condemning all other attacks. He really won't take the courageous stand of saying terrorism is always wrong, and it's part of the policy of Hamas, and we have to stop inciting it, inspiring it. And when the media creates a moral equivalence between the two, it incentivizes violence.
Okay, so what needs to be done? Besides the media needs to tone things down, in your mind?
Well, in my mind. And what has to be done is we have to de-escalate, and we have to make sure that terrorism is treated as terrorism. The reason we have so much terrorism in the world today is because terrorism works. When Hamas attacks Israel and Israel retaliates...
Israel respond to these attacks at the synagogue?
Well, it has to respond, first of all, by finding the perpetrators, finding out if there were any other people, seeing who takes responsibility, taking appropriate actions against those who incite terrorism, and figuring out a strategy, whether that strategy is destroying the homes of the terrorists or other actions. They have to first protect their civilians. That's the first instinct. Then second, they have to move toward de-escalating. And I have to tell you, Benjamin Netanyahu has been doing a wonderful job trying to de-escalate the tensions. We cannot allow this to be turned into a religious war.
I can't say the tensions have been much de-escalated.
Well, they ended the restrictions of access to the top of the mountain. That what has to be made sure is that this is not...
Why did they put the restrictions on?
Because there was violence. And you always put restrictions. Look, in Ferguson, there are restrictions on access. We do that in the United States. It was in an attempt to try to prevent further escalations. Even if you think it's a mistake, that's a tactical mistake, but you cannot turn this into a religious war because there's no rational solution to religious war. This has to be resolved as a civil conflict between competing interests.